And so we're going to start with Kellee Collier's presentation on the analysis of sand grain sizes and Pismo clam presence on beaches in Orange County, California.
Thank you, Nancy. Yes, so again, my name is Kellee Collier. I am a master's student at UC Irvine, but I am also an intern for Nancy at Get Inspired. And so I'm going to be introducing the one topic of our research at Get Inspired. And so the target of our study is the Pismo clam. They have a historical range from Marin County, California to Baja, California in Mexico. They inhabit sandy beaches and also sandy subtidal habitats. They are a long-lived and also a slow-growing species. Pismo clams were once a thriving subsistence and recreational fishery in California, but due to primarily overfishing throughout the 1900s, their populations have had a massive decline. And so even though there are catch limit sizes that are set to a length that should decrease fishing pressure, Pismo clam populations still remain low throughout many areas in California. There have been a few regional population assessments for Pismo clams. However, there have been no comprehensive baseline population assessments in Orange County, California to date. And so currently, this is what Get Inspired has been focusing on for the last several years. And while we still have more beaches to survey, currently our calculated density for Pismo clams is 0.08 clams per meter squared. And so this project and our work at Get Inspired is part of a larger collaborative effort with Holdfast Aquaculture and also Concordia University. We are aiming to better understand the Pismo clam life cycle and achieve XC2 production of Pismo clams to develop a framework for commercial production. So there are no public records of successful aquaculture for the species. And so Dr. Sean Brignami at Concordia University and also Ian Jacobson at Holdfast Aquaculture have been spearheading this project. Sean Brignami recently presented on their success at spawning and growing Pismo clams XC2 for the first time at the World Aquaculture Society meeting last month. And so for us to be able to reach our ultimate goal of restoring Pismo clam populations in Orange County, we must first be able to be successful at producing them in a hatchery setting. And so in order to complete our comprehensive baseline population assessment, we have been sampling all of the sandy beaches in Orange County since 2022. We are covering the distance from Seal Beach in northern Orange County to Irvine Cove in Laguna Beach. This is going to be a total of about 18 miles of sandy beaches, and we have roughly 5 miles remaining to survey, which we estimate will take about 2 years. And so you can see in the map, the red covered coastal area is areas that we have surveyed, and the yellow is still regions that we need to complete. And so in order to complete these, as utilized along the photo above. And so this the water's edge to standing in about 16 inches of water. The volunteers will rake parallel to the shoreline for 300 meters and stop whenever they hit a clam with their rake. From there, we take GPS coordinates of the clam's location and also gather information on the clam's length and weight. And so in order for us to eventually aid in restoring populations of Pismo clams in Orange County, we need to know the ideal habitat conditions for the species. Several studies have noted that sediment characteristics influence sandy intertidal organisms, and one survey has found, well, one survey that was surveying multiple sites throughout California had suggested that median sediment grain size is an important predictor for Pismo clam presence. Also, as seen in the photo, Orange County has had and will likely continue to have a lot of beach renourishment projects. Um, Therefore, we want to understand if the sediment characteristics are a significant enough factor in determining Pismo clam presence in Orange County, if we want to continue to plan for Pismo clam restoration. And so in order for us to do this, we are asking the questions, are sand grain sizes different at sites where clams are present versus sites where clams are absent? And also, does sand grain size affect the probability of Pismo clam presence? During the surveys that I had described earlier, we also carried out sand collection. And so we collected a sand sample 3 times throughout a survey when we found that clams were present. When we did find a clam, the roughly top 20 centimeters of sand was collected and then bagged up for analysis. When surveys were done and no clams were found at a site, we took 3 sand samples from the beginning, middle, and end of the survey. We also collected them in varying water depths and collected the sand the same way we would have if clams were present. And so after the sand samples were collected, they were dried and sieved through a series of mesh sizes. So the samples were weighed as they were sieved through each mesh size, and the percent total was the percent total was calculated based on the amount of sand passed through each sieve. The mesh category that had the largest percent total of the total weight is what we identified that sand sample as. And so the types of sand samples that we categorized fell into silt, very fine sand, medium and coarse sand, very coarse, very fine pebbles, and then fine pebbles. And this was based on the Wentworth grain size chart from USGS. And so we had a total of 142 samples taken since 2022. 68% of our samples were collected at sites where clams were present, and then the remaining 32% were at sites collected where clams were not present. These 2 graphs allow us to visualize the percent breakdown of the grain size categories from each sand sample. And so while we do see some variety across these 2 graphs, there is definitely an overwhelming majority found in the FS and the MS, which stand for the fine sand and the medium sand categories. And so at clam present sites, 75% of the samples were categorized as fine sand, followed by having medium sand and then also coarse sand. And at clam absent sites, 56% of the sand was categorized as fine sand, followed by medium sand, coarse sand, and then also a fine pebble or very fine pebble. And so in prior studies where clams were present, coarse sand was actually never a common sand grain type, but we did happen to find that in Orange County. And so we had found through statistical analysis that there was a low probability in determining clam presence based on sand grain size. And furthermore, based on our chi-square analysis, We do not have sufficient evidence to say that there is an association between clam presence and sand grain size. However, I do want to note that while we didn't have statistical significance, we did have a near statistical significance with a p-value of 0.06, which does lead me to continue to consider this variable of grain size as a potential factor in clam presence, but that is something that we will consider and we will continue analyzing in the future. And so, in conclusion of this project, we still do have 5 miles remaining for Pismo clam surveys across the sandy beaches in Orange County. But once that is complete, we will have a completed comprehensive baseline population assessment of all the Pismo clams in Orange County. Additionally, we are also going to have a very good understanding of the common sand grain types across all the sandy beaches in Orange County. And while I do want to keep considering sand grain size as a potential factor in determining clam presence in Orange County, I believe this can also open the door for us to explore a lot of other factors related to Pismo clam presence, including the consideration of wave action and also the consideration of grain type along with slope, as it has been analyzed in prior studies before. And so I would like to give a huge thanks to everybody who's been a part of this project. I'd like to thank the over 300 volunteers from Get Inspired that have been a part of this project. Without them, we wouldn't have completed nearly as much surveying as we do now today. Additionally, I want to say a special thanks to John Phibbs and also Mercedes Heineman for taking on the lead of sampling and going and processing all the sand samples. That was such a huge amount of work and is, of course, greatly appreciated. And of course, oh my gosh, I'm having a little cough fit. And of course, I want to say thank you to Nancy Caruso for being my advisor and also allowing me to be just a small part of this project. And so that's it for our talk today. And of course, if anyone wants to have any questions, they can always reach out to me or Nancy.